She calmed the crying baby like a mother and had no idea she was changing the course of two lives. The father, upon arriving and witnessing the scene, was completely speechless. From that moment, something inside him broke, and something new began to grow. He was never the same again, because sometimes love appears where you least expect it. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. Let's continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. Emily Davis stepped off the crowded bus in downtown Washington, D.C., adjusting the worn backpack on her shoulders. 6 months in the nation's capital, and she still felt like a stranger in this city of concrete and power. She walked hurriedly toward the building of the cleaning company, where she had worked since arriving from rural Virginia. The clock showed 6:40 a.m. when she entered the small room where the employees received their daily assignments. "Emily, today you're going to Georgetown. Luxury apartment, new and demanding client," said Mrs. Johnson, the supervisor, handing her a paper with the address. "Don't disappoint me. It was a special request from a friend of the company owner." The 23-year-old young woman nodded, swallowing hard. Clients from the upscale area meant huge houses, many hours of work, and frequently employers who barely noticed her existence. She took the second bus of the day, this time heading to the richest area of the city, observing through the window how the urban landscape gradually transformed, the crowded buildings giving way to mansions and high-end condominiums. Upon arriving at the indicated address, Emily was momentarily paralyzed in front of the imposing building. The entrance was all marble, with an artificial waterfall forming a wall of water that descended gently beside the entrance hall. The doorman, after verifying her name on the list of authorized people, directed her to the private elevator to the penthouse. "18th floor, miss. Mr. Anderson isn't home, but he left the keys and instructions." The mirrored elevator reflected her simple figure, brown hair tied in an improvised bun, the company's blue uniform, hands already marked by heavy work. For a moment, she felt completely out of place in that luxurious environment. Upon entering the apartment, Emily was greeted by absolute silence. The panoramic view of the city through the immense glass windows took her breath away, but there was no time for contemplation. She placed the cleaning materials on the floor and began to examine the place to plan her work. The decoration was minimalist and impersonal, expensive furniture but almost no personal objects. It looked more like a furniture showroom than a residence. As she walked through the rooms, she noticed a curious contrast. The environment was immaculately clean, as if it had already been recently tidied, but it exuded a palpable sadness, an absence of life. That's when she heard it. A distant cry, almost imperceptible. Initially, she thought it was her imagination, but the sound continued, fragile and insistent. She followed the noise to a room at the end of the corridor. The door was ajar. As she gently pushed it open, Emily saw one of the most unexpected scenes of her life, a meticulously decorated baby room in pastel tones, with a crib in the center, and inside it, a baby of approximately 6 months, crying, alone with her little face red from so much effort. "My God, where's your mother, little one?" whispered Emily, cautiously approaching the crib. The baby, upon noticing her presence, intensified her crying, extending her little arms upward in a silent request to be picked up. Emily hesitated, looking around for an adult. There was no one. "Easy. I'm here," she said softly, leaning over to pick up the child. The moment she took the baby in her arms, something extraordinary happened. The crying ceased instantly. The little one looked at Emily with immense blue eyes, almost as if she recognized her, and then, to the young woman's complete amazement, smiled. It was a luminous smile that completely transformed the little face that had been contorted in tears before. The baby clung to her, nestling against her chest as if that were the safest place in the world. "Hi, beautiful," Emily whispered, gently rocking her. "Where is everyone?" As a response, she heard only a happy gurgle. Intrigued and concerned, she began to walk around the apartment with the baby in her arms, looking for some sign of another person. In the impeccable kitchen, she found a half-empty bottle and a high chair. In the living room, a folder of documents and a pen thrown on the sofa, as if someone had left in a hurry. She returned to the baby's room and saw a framed photo on the dresser. A man of approximately 35 years, dark hair and serious expression, next to a blonde woman with a radiant smile, showing a pregnant belly. The same baby who was now playing with her necklace. "Your mommy must be coming back soon, right?" she asked the little one, who just continued smiling, clinging to her. 20 minutes passed. Emily's concern increased. Should she call the company, the police? The baby seemed well cared for, clean and fed. She showed no signs of neglect, but she was alone in a luxury apartment without adult supervision. That's when she heard the sound of the main door opening. Quickly, she headed to the living room, the baby still in her arms. A tall man in an impeccable dark suit and exhausted expression entered hurriedly. He was the same one from the photograph. Upon seeing her standing in the middle of the room with the baby, he froze. His eyes, of a deep blue, identical to the child's, widened in shock. "Who are you? What are you doing with my daughter?" he asked in an accusatory tone, advancing toward her. "I'm Emily Davis from the cleaning company," she replied, feeling her heart race. "I arrived to do the cleaning and found the baby alone, crying." The man stopped, running his hand through, his hair in a gesture of evident frustration. "The nanny should be here. She assured me she would stay until I returned." At that moment, as if sensing the tension, the baby began to get restless in Emily's arms. She instinctively rocked her, making small circular movements with her body. To the surprise of both, the child calmed immediately, smiling again. "Sophia never does that," commented the man, observing the scene with amazement. "She has been crying constantly for the past few weeks. None of the 4 nannies I've hired has managed to calm her like this." Emily felt uncomfortable under the man's intense, evaluating gaze. "I can put her back in the crib to start my work, Mr. Anderson." "Henry Anderson," he replied, still carefully observing the interaction between the young woman and his daughter. "And no, please, continue holding her for a moment. I need to make a call." He stepped away, phone in hand, visibly irritated while talking to someone Emily presumed to be the absent nanny. Meanwhile, little Sophia played happily with a strand of hair that had escaped from the young woman's bun. "How do you do it?" asked Henry upon returning, putting the cell phone in his pocket. "Sophia doesn't let anyone get close to her since—" He stopped abruptly, a flash of pain crossing his face. "I have 5 younger siblings," Emily explained simply. "I practically raised them while my mother worked. Children sense when we're comfortable with them." Henry nodded slowly, observing his daughter, who was now sleeping peacefully in the stranger's arms. It was the first time in weeks he had seen Sophia so serene. "The nanny won't be coming back," he said after a moment of silence. "She just quit over the phone, said she can't handle the constant crying." Emily felt a wave of compassion for the man in front of her. Behind the facade of a successful executive, there were deep circles under his eyes and the expression of someone who hadn't slept properly for a long time. "I can put her in the crib now that she's sleeping," she offered. "No!" The response came too quickly, almost desperate. Henry seemed embarrassed by his own reaction. "I mean, if you don't mind, could you stay with her a little longer? I need to finish some work calls and, well, she never sleeps like this." Emily nodded, understanding. She sat on the living room sofa, gently cradling the sleeping baby, while Henry observed her with an indescribable expression, a mixture of relief, curiosity, and something that seemed like hope. 3 hours later, Emily was still in Henry's apartment. The cleaning, which should have been the reason for her presence there, had been completely forgotten. Sophia had woken up smiling after her nap and was now playing animatedly on the living room rug with some colorful toys that Emily had found in a box in the baby's room. Henry observed the scene from the other side of the room, where he had improvised an office at the dining table. He tried to concentrate on the documents in front of him, but his eyes constantly drifted to the young woman who interacted with his daughter with a naturalness he himself had never managed to develop. "She really likes you," he commented, closing the laptop. I've never seen her so happy. Emily smiled, lifting little Sophia in the air, who responded with a crystalline laugh. Children are like that. They sense people's energy, she replied, placing the baby back on the rug. She checked her watch and frowned. It's almost 2 in the afternoon. I need to go to my next job. Henry rose abruptly, an expression of alarm crossing his face. So soon? I mean, won't you finish the cleaning? I'm sorry, but I have another client at 3 and I haven't even started here, she explained, embarrassed. I can come back tomorrow to make up for it if you prefer. Henry walked to the window, contemplating the panoramic view of Washington, D.C. for a few moments. He seemed to be waging an internal battle. When he turned, there was a new determination in his gaze. How much do you earn per month? He asked directly. Emily blushed, surprised by the direct question. $1,200 plus transportation, she replied with hesitation. I offer 3 times that amount for you to take care of my daughter, he proposed, without beating around the bush. Housing included in the maid's room, food, health, insurance. And he added, noticing the expression of shock on the young woman's face, I'll pay for your education if you want to go back to school. Emily felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. How do you know I abandoned my studies? A slight smile appeared at the corner of Henry's lips. I noticed your look while examining the books on the shelf. It's the same one I had at 20 when I had to leave college to work. She lowered her eyes, feeling inexplicably exposed. It was true, the early childhood education course interrupted in the 2nd year was her biggest frustration. Why me? She asked, genuinely confused. You don't know me, I'm just a cleaner who showed up at your door today. Exactly because of that, Henry replied, approaching and sitting on the sofa near the rug where Sophia was playing. 6 professional nannies, all with impeccable references, all unable to calm my daughter. You arrived and in minutes achieved what no one has achieved in weeks. Sophia, as if understanding that she was the subject of the conversation, crawled to Emily and grabbed onto her leg, letting out happy little screams. See? Henry pointed, a trace of emotion escaping from behind the controlled businessman facade. She chose you. Emily felt her heart tighten. She picked up the little one in her arms, who immediately began playing with her simple silver necklace, a gift from her mother before leaving Virginia. I don't know, Mr. Anderson. It's a very big decision. She hesitated. I have to think. About my current situation, the boarding house where I live. Boarding house? He interrupted, frowning. Yes, I share a room with 2 other girls in Anacostia, she explained. It's not ideal, but it's what I can afford while I save money for a better place. Henry got up, walking again to the window. When he spoke again, his voice had a different tone, less businesslike and more human. I'll be honest with you, Emily. I'm desperate, he confessed, running his hand through his hair in a gesture that she had already noticed was habitual when he was nervous. Since my wife left us during childbirth 6 months ago, I haven't been able to establish a real connection with my daughter. The doctors say Sophia feels my emotional distance, and that's why she cries so much. Emily felt a lump in her throat, so that was it. The absence in the photo, the impeccable but lifeless apartment, Henry's sad eyes. I'm sorry, she murmured, cradling Sophia, who now rested peacefully in her arms. Today was the first time I've seen my daughter truly happy since she was born, he continued, his voice slightly choked. That's priceless to me. If you need time to think, I understand, but my offer is serious. At that moment, Emily's cell phone vibrated in the pocket of her uniform. It was a message from the supervisor, asking why she hadn't arrived at the next client yet. I need to go, she said, reluctant to leave little Sophia, who now seemed about to nap again in her arms. I can pick up your things from the boarding house today, if you accept, Henry insisted, a flash of hope in his tired eyes. Emily looked around, the luxurious apartment, the stunning view, the proposal that would completely change her life. It was too tempting, but also frightening. I need at least a day to think, she finally replied, and talk to my mother. Henry nodded, visibly disappointed but understanding. Tomorrow, then. I'll wait for your answer. Emily returned Sophia to her father carefully, feeling a tightness in her chest as she saw how the baby immediately began to get agitated in his arms. "I can come back tomorrow at the same time," she offered, picking up her backpack, "to give you my answer, and if it's no, at least finish the cleaning I should have done today." That night, lying on the thin mattress she shared with two other women in the small boarding house in the outskirts, Emily couldn't sleep. Henry's proposal hammered in her head, along with the image of Sophia's little blue eyes shining at her. She picked up her cell phone and called her mother in Virginia, even though it was almost midnight. "Daughter, it's crazy," said Martha Davis, after hearing the whole story. "You barely know this man. What if he has ulterior motives?" "It's not like that, Mom," Emily defended. "He really seems concerned about his daughter, and the proposal includes resuming my studies. You know how much that means to me." A tired sigh sounded from the other end of the line. "You've always been stubborn, Emily. If you've already decided, why are you calling me?" "Because I'm afraid," she admitted, her voice lowering to a whisper so as not to wake her roommates. "Afraid of getting attached to the baby. Afraid of not being able to handle it. Afraid of getting into a complicated situation." "It's a risk," her mother agreed after a moment of silence. "But it's also an opportunity. If he seems decent and the proposal is clear, maybe it's worth trying." "What does your heart say?" That child needs me," she answered without hesitation, "and that I also need her in some way I can't explain." The next morning, Emily returned to Henry's apartment with a small suitcase containing her few belongings. She found him in the living room with even deeper dark circles, rocking Sophia, who was crying inconsolably. Upon seeing her, the baby immediately extended her little arms in her direction, the crying transforming into smiles. Henry observed the scene with a mixture of relief and something that seemed almost like jealousy. "So you accepted," he stated, handing Sophia to Emily. "With some conditions," she replied, as she settled the little one in her arms. "I want a formal contract with all labor rights. I want freedom to implement an appropriate routine for Sophia, based on what I learned in my early childhood education college courses. And I want it to be clear that I am not a domestic employee. I am your daughter's caregiver." Henry observed her with a new expression, respect. "Impressive," he commented. "I expected you to ask for a higher salary." "What you offered is already more than fair," she replied simply, "and I'm not here for the money. I'm here for her." She indicated Sophia with a gentle gesture. In the following weeks, the once silent and cold apartment began to transform. Emily brought life to that space with small touches, plants in the windows, soft music playing during the day, the aroma of homemade food replacing the frozen meals and delivery that Henry used to order. For Sophia, she established a loving and stimulating routine, regular times for feeding and sleeping, activities appropriate for her development, relaxing baths with children's songs that she herself sang with her sweet voice. The baby, who used to cry constantly, was now a happy and active child who smiled at everyone and was already trying to take her first steps holding onto furniture. Henry, initially distant and immersed in work, began to notice the changes. First it was the silence, no longer the oppressive silence of before, but a tranquil silence, occasionally broken by Sophia's laughter or Emily's melodious voice singing lullabies. Then it was the small gestures, breakfast prepared on the table before he left for the office, photos of Sophia achieving new milestones that Emily sent to his cell phone during the day, the welcoming home that received him at night, so different from the cold mausoleum he lived in before. 3 months had passed since Emily had entered Henry and Sophia's lives. Autumn was arriving in Washington, D.C., bringing strong winds and sudden rains that transformed the capital's sky into dramatic spectacles of lightning and thunder. On that particular night, an especially violent storm was battering the city. Emily was finishing bathing Sophia, who now at 9 months was happily slapping her little hands in the water, spreading foam everywhere. The young woman couldn't contain her smile as she observed how the baby had flourished in the last few months. She was chubbier, with rosy cheeks and vivacious eyes that followed everything around her with intense curiosity. "You're soaking." "Aunt Emily, you little mischief," she joked, pretending indignation as she dried the little one's face with a soft towel. "Not aunt," corrected a male voice from the bathroom door. "She's more than that to you, isn't she, daughter?" Henry was leaning against the doorframe, observing the scene with a discreet smile. He had arrived earlier from work, something that had become increasingly frequent in the last few weeks. Emily noticed how he seemed different from the man she had met on the first day. The rigid posture had given way to a more relaxed presence. The perpetually serious countenance occasionally opened into genuine smiles, especially when he interacted with his daughter. "Sorry, I didn't hear you arrive with the noise of the rain," said Emily, lifting Sophia from the bathtub and wrapping her in the fluffy towel. "I left before the meeting ended," he explained, approaching to receive his daughter in his arms. "Something told me I should be home today." As if to confirm his premonition, particularly strong thunder exploded in the sky, making the apartment lights flicker before going out completely. "Perfect," Henry murmured in the sudden darkness. "Must have been a nearby lightning strike," commented Emily calmly. "I'll get the candles I stored in the pantry." With the familiarity of someone who knew every inch of the apartment, she navigated through the darkness to the kitchen, returning minutes later with a small battery-powered lantern and some thick candles. "You were prepared for this," observed Henry, impressed, while he rocked Sophia, who surprisingly hadn't been frightened by the darkness. "I grew up in the countryside," she explained simply, lighting the candles and distributing them strategically around the living room. There, losing power during storms was as common as the sunset. The living room gained a cozy atmosphere with the flickering light of the candles. Outside, the storm continued mercilessly, whipping the windows with rain gusts. Emily dressed Sophia in a warm onesie and handed her to Henry while she went to the kitchen. "What do you think of a candle-lit dinner while we wait for the power to come back?" she suggested, quickly opening the refrigerator to take out some ingredients before they cooled. "You don't have to trouble yourself. We can order something when the rain diminishes," he replied, but Emily was already separating bread, cheese, and fruits on a tray. "No delivery on a night like this," she declared firmly. "Besides, I have a surprise in the refrigerator that needs to be consumed soon." Half an hour later, they were sitting at the living room table, illuminated only by candles and the lantern. Emily had prepared a charcuterie board, artisanal bread she had bought that morning, and to Henry's surprise, a chocolate cake she had made during the afternoon. "When did you have time for this?" he asked, cutting a generous slice. "While Sophia was taking her afternoon nap," she replied, serving some natural juice in his glass. "Today marks exactly 3 months since I've been here. I thought it deserved a little celebration." Henry stopped with his fork halfway to his mouth, visibly surprised. 3 months already? It seems like just yesterday that you arrived." "To me, it seems like a lifetime," she confessed, looking lovingly at Sophia, who was playing peacefully in the playpen near the table. A comfortable silence settled between them as they ate, broken only by the sound of the rain and Sophia's occasional gurgles. It was strange how they had become accustomed to each other's presence, developing a harmonious routine that neither of them would have imagined possible at the beginning. "How's college?" asked Henry, breaking the silence. Emily's face lit up. Resuming her early childhood education course, now that she had the financial means, had been like recovering a lost piece of herself. "Wonderful," she replied enthusiastically. "I'm working hard to make up for lost time. My professors say I have a natural talent for early childhood education." "Doesn't surprise me," commented Henry, observing her over his glass. "I see how you are with Sophia. You have a gift." Emily felt her face heat up, and it wasn't just from the effect of the wine. Henry's compliments had become more frequent in recent weeks, as had the moments when their gazes met for too long. "Speaking of which," she continued, trying to change the subject, "I've noticed that Sophia is trying to say some words. I think Dada will be the first." "Really?" His face lit up like a child's at Christmas. "She never tries when I'm around." "Because you still get tense when you're with her," Emily explained gently. "Children are like mirrors. They reflect our energy. When you completely relax, you'll see the difference." Henry lowered his eyes to his plate. a shadow crossing his countenance. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to," he admitted in a low voice. "Every time I look at her, I see Helen. It's like reliving the loss every day." Emily extended her hand across the table, gently touching his in an instinctive gesture of comfort. "Have you ever thought that maybe it's not just loss, that it might also be a gift she left for you?" Henry raised his eyes, meeting hers in the golden penumbra created by the candles. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It wasn't necessary. There was a silent understanding flowing between them, something that transcended words. "You've changed this place," he finally said, his voice huskier than normal. "Changed, Sophia. Changed." "You?" she completed, almost in a whisper. He nodded, slowly, his fingers intertwining with hers on the table. The contact sent an electric current through Emily's body, awakening sensations she had been trying to ignore for weeks. "I'm afraid," Henry confessed, without averting his gaze, "afraid of confusing gratitude with something else?" she completed again, her heart beating so hard she feared he might hear it. The distance between them gradually diminished, as if they were magnets being attracted by an invisible force. In the penumbra of the room, with the storm roaring outside, their lips met in a hesitant kiss, filled with unformulated questions and still uncertain answers. It was Sophia who broke the moment, letting out an excited little scream from the playpen, as if approving what she had just witnessed. Both pulled away abruptly, the charm broken by the reality that imposed itself again. I'm sorry," Henry murmured, running his hand through his hair in his characteristic gesture of nervousness. "That was completely inappropriate on my part." "Don't apologize," replied Emily, struggling to control the tremor in her voice. "It was unexpected, but not unwanted." A charged silence fell over them, filled only by the sound of the rain that was beginning to diminish outside. The moment of magic had passed, leaving in its place a palpable tension. "I think it's better to put Sophia to bed," Emily finally said, rising to get the baby. "It's getting late." Henry nodded, unable to look at her. "I'll try to find out when the power will come back." That night, after Sophia fell asleep and Henry retired to his room, Emily remained awake in her small suite next to the baby's room. She mentally reviewed the kiss, the sensations it had awakened, the implications for her work, for her life. She was crossing a dangerous line. Henry was her employer. He was emotionally fragile from the loss of his wife. He had a small daughter who depended on her. The complications were numerous, and yet when she closed her eyes, all she could see was the deep blue of his gaze, the way his face transformed when he smiled, how his strong hands held Sophia with extreme delicacy. She was falling in love, and it terrified her. The next morning, the interaction between them was uncomfortably formal. Henry left early for work, barely touching the coffee she had prepared. Emily tried to focus on Sophia, on the established routine, on the small tasks that normally filled her day. But there was something different in the air, a tension that even the baby didn't fail to perceive, becoming more tearful and restless than usual. At noon, while arranging Sophia's room, Emily found a carved wooden box at the bottom of the closet. Normally, she would never touch Henry's personal belongings, but the lid was ajar, revealing what appeared to be a bundle of letters. She hesitated, her heart racing. She knew she shouldn't, that it was an invasion of privacy, but something impelled her, as if that box held answers to questions she didn't even know how to formulate. With trembling fingers, she removed an envelope from the top of the pile. It was addressed to Henry, dated 3 months before Sophia's birth. The handwriting was elegant, feminine. "Helen. I shouldn't do this," she murmured to herself, but even so, she opened the envelope. The words she found on the yellowed pages changed everything. The letter revealed a secret that Helen had carried. During her pregnancy, a betrayal and affair with Henry's business partner during a business trip. And even more shocking, the possibility that Sophia might not be his biological daughter. "I can't live with this lie anymore," Helen had written. "When the baby is born, we will do a DNA test. You deserve to know the truth, even if it means the end of our marriage." Emily let the paper fall, horrified by what she had just discovered. The letter was dated a week before Helen's delivery. before her sudden departure. She never had the chance to personally reveal the truth to Henry, and now this bomb was in Emily's hands. The envelope trembled in Emily's hands as she put the letter back in the box. Her heart was beating erratically, her mind full of conflicting thoughts. Should she tell Henry? Pretend she never saw that devastating revelation? The consequences seemed equally terrifying. For the rest of the day, she moved through the apartment like a sleepwalker, performing her tasks automatically while Helen's letter echoed in her mind. Sophia, sensitive as always to her caregivers, emotions, was restless, refusing food and crying for no apparent reason. When Henry arrived later than usual, Emily immediately noticed that something was wrong. He entered with his shoulders drooping, his expression closed, avoiding her gaze. "We need to talk," he announced, placing his briefcase on the sofa. "About last night." Emily nodded, feeling her stomach sink. Sophia was already asleep, the apartment immersed in a silence that only amplified the tension between them. "What happened last night was a mistake," Henry began, keeping himself at a safe distance. "I confused gratitude with something more. You are an employee of this house, responsible. For my daughter, I can't compromise that with momentary impulses." Each word was like a small blade, cutting the hopes that Emily didn't even know she was nurturing. But behind the pain, there was also relief. The kiss had created a smokescreen that hid the real problem: Helen's letter. "I completely understand," she responded with dignity, although she felt a lump in her throat. "It was a moment of weakness for both of us. It won't happen again." Henry seemed momentarily disconcerted by her too quick agreement. Perhaps he expected resistance. Perhaps he even wished she would disagree. "Good," he said, running his hand through his hair. "Then we can put this behind us and continue as before." But they couldn't. The kiss, although now relegated to oblivion by mutual agreement, had been merely the physical manifestation of something that had been growing between them for months. The letter, on the other hand, was a ticking time bomb that Emily now carried alone. In the weeks that followed, a cautious distance was established between them. Henry started arriving home later from work, often when Sophia was already asleep. Emily kept herself strictly professional, limiting their interactions to what was necessary for the baby's well-being. The letter remained there, hidden in the wooden box, like a corrosive secret between them. Each time Emily looked at Sophia, at her little blue eyes identical to Henry's, she wondered, could it be possible that she wasn't his daughter? And more importantly, did he have the right to know? It was on a rainy Thursday that everything came to a breaking point. Emily was tidying Sophia's room when Henry entered unexpectedly. By his red eyes and altered breathing, she immediately realized that something serious had happened. "I found this," he said, holding up Helen's letter, "at the bottom of my document drawer. Did you know?" The world seemed to freeze around Emily. The lie formed easily on her tongue. She could deny it, say she had never seen that paper. But something in her face must have revealed the truth. "How long?" asked Henry, his voice dangerously low. 3 weeks, she confessed, feeling her legs tremble. "I found it by accident while cleaning the room. I should have told you, but you decided to hide it from me," he completed, his face contorted in a mixture of anger and disappointment. "Like everyone else, like Helen." "I didn't want to hurt you," she tried to explain, taking a step in his direction. "Leave," he ordered, backing away. "I need space, time. Henry, please, now." The shout was so unexpected that Emily backed away, startled. In the next room, Sophia began to cry, awakened by the noise. Emily hesitated, torn between Henry's order and the instinct to go to the baby. He noticed her indecision, and his face softened minimally. "I'll take care of her," he said, in a more controlled tone. I need to be alone with my daughter, or whoever she may be." That night, Emily spent in a cheap hotel in the city center, her cell phone permanently next to the pillow, waiting for a call that didn't come. She slept little, tormented by nightmares in which Sophia cried for her, little hands extended, into the void. The next morning, against her better judgment, she returned to the apartment. She found Henry in the living room, his face marked by a sleepless night, his eyes swollen from crying for hours. I ordered a DNA test, he announced, without preamble. Results in 2 weeks. Emily nodded, uncertain of her role in that situation. Do you want me to stay with Sophia while you wait, or? I hired a temporary nanny, he replied, avoiding her gaze. I think it's better we distance ourselves until everything is clarified. The words hit Emily like a physical punch. She was being dismissed, removed from Sophia, from the child she loved as if she were her own. I understand, she murmured, fighting against tears. Can I at least say goodbye to her? Henry hesitated, as if waging an internal battle before nodding rigidly. She's in the room. Emily found Sophia sitting in the crib, playing with a teddy bear. Upon seeing her, the baby immediately lit up, raising her little arms and babbling animatedly. Hi, my love, whispered Emily, picking her up and pressing her against her chest. Aunt needs to stay away for a while, but I promise I'll be back. You'll be fine, so fine. The tears she had tried to contain finally escaped, wetting the baby's fine hair. Sophia, sensing her sadness, touched her face with her chubby little hands as if trying to console her. Take care of your dad, Emily murmured against the top of her head. He really needs you right now. Upon leaving the room, she found Henry standing in the hallway observing the scene. There was something different in his gaze, no longer anger, but a deep sadness, almost resigned. She misses you when you're not around, he commented, his voice hoarse. She never accepted anyone else well. Children are like that, replied Emily, reluctantly handing him the baby. They form bonds quickly, but they also adapt. She'll be fine. As she packed her things, she felt the weight of each object she put in her suitcase, not just clothes and belongings, but pieces of the life she had built there, of shared moments, of Sophia's first words, of sunny mornings on the balcony, of cozy nights in the living room. Where will you go? Asked Henry when she appeared in the living room with her suitcase ready. I don't know yet, she admitted. Maybe back to Virginia for a while until I decide what to do. He nodded, seeming to want to say something more, but containing himself. Emily gave one last look at Sophia, who was playing distractedly on the rug, and headed to the door. Emily, Henry called when her hand touched the doorknob. She turned, her heart racing. Regardless of the test result, you were the best thing that happened to Sophia since she was born. The words, although comforting, only made the farewell more painful. The 3 weeks that followed were the longest in Emily's life. She had returned to the small Virginia town where she grew up, to her mother's simple house who received her with open arms and questions in her eyes. She told her everything: the job, Sophia, Henry, the kiss, the letter, the farewell. Martha Davis listened in silence, her wrinkled hands holding her daughter's. The heart knows, Emily, said the older woman when she finished. Even before the head understands, the heart has already decided. What is yours saying now? That, I need to go back, she replied without hesitation. Even if it's just for a definitive goodbye, I need to know. On the 20th day away from Washington, D.C., her cell phone rang at 3 a.m. It was Henry. Sophia won't stop crying, he said, his voice choked with exhaustion and desperation. I've tried everything. 3 nannies have given up. She doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, just cries calling for you. Emily sat up in bed, completely awake. The test result? I haven't opened it yet, he confessed. I couldn't, but it doesn't matter anymore. Come, please. Sophia needs you. We need you. 12 hours later, Emily was back at the Georgetown apartment. The scene she found broke her heart. Sophia, visibly thinner, with dark circles under her little eyes that used to be so bright, and Henry, seeming to have aged years in weeks. Upon seeing her, the baby extended her arms in a gesture of pure relief, like someone who finally finds water in the desert. Emily ran to her, taking her in her arms, kissing her little face while tears of joy streamed down her cheeks. I'll never leave you again, my love, she promised, cradling her against her chest. Never again. Henry observed the scene with an indescribable expression, relief, gratitude, and something deeper, more complex. The envelope is on the table, he said, indicating a white paper on the center table. The test result, I couldn't open it. Emily looked at the sealed envelope, feeling its invisible weight fill the environment. Are you sure you want to know? No, he admitted, surprising her, but I need to be able to move forward one way or another. She nodded, understanding. With Sophia cuddled in her lap, already almost falling asleep after the emotional exhaustion of the last few weeks, Emily observed Henry open the envelope with trembling fingers. His eyes scanned the paper quickly once, twice. His face remained impassive, impossible to read. "Well?" she finally asked, her heart pounding in her chest. Henry raised his eyes from the paper, meeting hers. A slow, almost incredulous smile began to form on his lips. "She's my daughter," he said, his voice choked. "Biologically mine." Emily released the air she hadn't realized she was holding. Tears of relief appeared in her eyes as she held Sophia tighter against herself. "But that doesn't matter anymore," continued Henry, approaching and kneeling beside the armchair where she was sitting. "These days without you showed me what it really means to be a father. It's not about blood or DNA, it's about love, presence, daily choice." He extended his hand, gently touching Sophia's face, who was sleeping peacefully in Emily's arms. "Helen did betray me, yes," he continued, his voice firmer now. "But Sophia is my daughter, and you, Emily, are part of our family, if you'll still have us." She looked at him, at the man she had come to know and love over the last months, at the father who was fighting to overcome his wounds and fears for love of his daughter. "What exactly are you saying, Henry?" He took her free hand, holding it between his. "I'm saying that I love you, that Sophia loves you, that we want you to stay, not as an employee, but as a permanent part of our lives." Emily's heart overflowed with emotion. She looked at the little one asleep in her arms, at the man kneeling in front of her, and knew with absolute certainty that she had found her place in the world. "I love you too," she replied, her voice choked by the tears that now flowed freely. "More than I imagined it was possible to love someone." 6 months later, in a simple ceremony by the Potomac River, Emily and Henry exchanged rings, with Sophia now taking her first uncertain steps as an improvised flower girl in Grandma Martha's arms. Life wasn't perfect. There were still difficult days, painful memories, constant adjustments in the family dynamics. But there was also laughter, achievements, moments of pure beauty that compensated for any difficulty. On Sophia's first birthday, while they watched the little one play with the cake, Henry handed Emily an envelope. "What is this?" she asked, intrigued. "Open it," he encouraged with an enigmatic smile. Inside, there were adoption documents. Henry had initiated the process for Emily to legally become Sophia's mother. "I want it to be official," he explained in face of her emotional look. "For you to have all the rights over her just as much as I do." "But you are the biological father," argued Emily, although her heart was already exploding with joy at the possibility. "And you are the mother she chose," he replied simply. "The rest is just bureaucracy." 3 years passed. The Anderson Davis family had moved to a spacious house with a garden where Sophia, now a chatterbox of 4 years, could run freely. Emily had completed her early childhood education degree and, inspired by her own experience, specialized in effective education. Together, she and Henry founded a preschool based on principles of nurturing and healthy emotional development. The project, initially small, had gained national recognition for its innovative practices. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, while Sophia played in the garden under the watchful eye of her parents, Emily realized how life could be surprising in its winding paths. Who would have thought that a young cleaner from Virginia would find not just a home but a life mission upon entering that luxury apartment 4 years ago? "What are you thinking about?" asked Henry, noticing her distant look. "About how it all began," she replied, smiling. "On the day I entered your apartment to clean and found a baby crying alone." He intertwined his fingers with hers, watching their daughter running happily across the lawn. "It was fate," he said, gently kissing her hand, or perhaps simply the kind of love that transcends explanations. Emily nodded, snuggling up to her husband as she contemplated her family. A family built not by blood, but by daily choices, by constant presence, by a love that had grown slowly, like a seed planted in fertile soil, now blooming under the sun of a new day. The end of the E story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Emily, Henry, and Sophia has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here, clicking on the left. If you like this narrative about bonds that transcend blood, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of human relationships and the transformative power of love. Don't miss our upcoming content.